Call to order the City Council work session for City of East Grand Forks for August 22nd, 2023. Would City Administrator please call roll?
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olstad.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riepel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Ben Pokshavinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms. Brian Larson.
Here.
Karen Peterson.
Here.
Does term quorum number, well, excuse me, first we'll go to Mr. Emery. He's going to give us a quick update, then we'll go to number one. So.
Thank you, Mr. President. Found out this morning from Op Construction, they would like to start work on Demers Avenue next Monday. Again, just as a reminder, the scope of work there is street improvements, ADA improvements. We'll be working from 4th Street by Up North Pizza. It'll be closed off there, and then it would be closed off at 10th Street, kind of by the old Burger King there. So that whole corridor will probably be closed down. Looking at Op Construction's project schedule, they're anticipating probably about 5 to 6 weeks to complete everything. I did put together a letter today, and I did get around to a lot of the businesses, got them a copy of the letter, discussed the project with the appropriate parties. So I think everyone's pretty much aware of it. Megan, thank you to her too. I think she did get it on the city website today. So the only thing we are just looking at, we're going to put a detour plan in place. We may try to just, because there is a lot of work kind of between 10th and Central there where the old railroad tracks were. So we may try to keep that stretch between 10th and Central open with just, I'm going to call it phase 1. Just so, that whole corridor isn't down as long as, 5-6 weeks. We'll try to minimize it, try to get them in there, work between 4th and Central, really focus on that area, try to shorten up this time frame. So, but everyone I talked to was pretty receptive for the most part, other than one individual. So. And he's one of the most challenging ones, just trying to get Opticare patients in and out, but I think we got a plan there too.
We're good. Just having fun.
Yep. So just kind of wanted to come today, give you an update on that. I guess as long as I got the stand, I'm still trying to work with Tyzak and Design Electric on that Hawk system. I'm not having a lot of luck, but I even reached out to our sub-consultant today, Alliant Engineering. Just asked them if they could reach out to this Design Electric just to try to get the whole story. Because again, last week I was told it was they lost a subcontractor. Now I'm hearing it's a material thing. So I'm staying on top of it, trying to get to the bottom of it. I don't know what else I can do other than, we do have liquidated damages that we can look at assessing at the end of this thing too. So, but any questions, I guess, for me? 5th Avenue Northeast, south of Highway 2, will be back open by the end of the week here. So probably Thursday or so we'll look at getting that back open. So things are coming along good.
Good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Move on to number one. Consider approving the 2024 fixed road and dial ride MNDOT applications. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Council President. Council members, since we have a few new members and a new city administrator, I'll try to just briefly kind of go through Transit Budgeting 101, just so everybody's familiar with how we go about our process of paying for our operating expenses for fixed route and dial-a-ride. The City of East Grand Forks is considered a 5307 small urban transit management type agency. And what that means is that we receive state funds as well as federal funds in the terms of appropriations. So every year the federal government gives us a set amount of dollars that we can use towards operating and capital. The state of Minnesota, under their rules, at one point in time, there was a memorandum that urbans could use 50-50, so 50% had to go to capital and 50% had to go to operating. Then the remaining portion of how we paid for our bus service and dial ride service would be from the state and or local funds. As we've gotten into these latter years, the state of Minnesota is starting to notice that it's becoming more and more difficult to fund all of, not just the urbans, but the rurals with their funding that they want to. And with the city of East Grand Forks, majority of our capital is not in buildings and or bus shelters because our services are run through Grand Forks. So we really didn't have a lot of capital to use except for buses. And the state of Minnesota was paying for our buses. So we were kind of sitting on appropriations, like in terms of like 4 or 5 years worth of appropriations that were just sitting there. So we have come to an agreement now with the state of Minnesota, which I never understood why they didn't want it in the first place, is that they're allowing us to use more of our federal dollars towards our operating to keep those costs down for the state of Minnesota to try to match it. So what we do then is when we get to our yearly application with the state of Minnesota, we have to look at a number of different things. One of them being, since we don't have our own service, we don't know what it costs on a daily basis to run that service. So it's basically just based on a billing. Cities Area Transit, we use what we call now a cost allocation plan, which I included. What it does is it looks at how many buses we have, who's getting the service, how many miles, how many peak hours, just in general, how we use that service. We're looking at a number of different things. We're looking at miles, we're looking at revenue hours, and then we're looking at peak service hours. And what we do is we take UND, which is now included in that, Grand Forks and East Grand Forks. We look at all of those things, and then we divide it by percentages. So we use about 9 to 10%, 11. It used to be when we had our own individual route within East Grand Forks. So then once we take those percentages, we look at all of those numbers, and then we start going into our cost allocation plan, which includes both direct costs and indirect costs. So salaries, administration, fuel, maintenance, and by maintenance I mean preventative maintenance, air conditioning, utilities, you name it, anything that it would take to run that service. And then we put that information in. He takes the percentages, Dale does, based on mileage, everything. That's how we get our numbers. They use numbers when they put in, like, let's say, copy machine and or administration, those types of things. They'll take the number that they've had from 3 years prior in their budgets, and they'll do a 3% increase. So we take those numbers, percentages, et cetera. So you'll see the cost allocation model. It gives us a pretty firm number as to what they think it's going to cost us. I take that, put it into the application for the state of Minnesota, add my salary, which is the state allows me to charge 25% of my salary to transit, which is about 10 hours a week. Add that into the application. They take that. They take the total number. They take the revenue off of it, which we expected about $3,500, and then they'll take the current year's appropriation, so the 2023 appropriation. They'll take that number at 75%. They'll subtract that. Then they'll do their percentage. So if it's around $300,000, if it's an 80-20, costs us 20%, then the state covers the remaining 80%. So that was for fixed route. For dial-a-ride, when we do dial-a-ride, we would do it as strictly as off of our national transit database. So we would take what we thought it cost average per customer times the number of customers that we figured we'd have, and that would be the number that I would use for the dial-a-ride application. what we found is that a lot of our dial-a-ride indirect costs, so administration, those types of things, were figured into fixed. So our fixed route numbers were quite high. Our dial-a-ride was based solely on just our riders and what it cost in terms of running that service. But it didn't look at all the extras, the dispatch, it didn't look at the drivers, those types of things. So we have since, because we're audited every year, and there's different audits that they look at. The state of Minnesota is now requiring that we be audited on an indirect cost method. So we have since, this is our first year, we have a cost allocation model for dial-a-ride, and now we have a cost allocation model for fixed route. It works better for us, it works better for the state of Minnesota, it works better for the federal government. It's easier for me because I get audited probably 4 different ways in the course of a year. From the feds, from the state, from indirect costs, and then they look at a monthly thing. So what you see here is what we've determined our 2024 costs are going to be with 25% of my salary. I take that 25% of my salary, divide it between 2, add it to each one of those applications. This year, during the legislature, they had the influx of revenue. They knew that transit was going to be kind of in a bind, so they decided to fund us at a 95.5%. So they're going to take care of 95% of the costs, and the city's local share will be 5%. However, they maxed us at what we could actually ask for in our application, which was a 3%. And it was based on past year's applications. That was very concerning to all of us urban managers because the cost of operating something hasn't just been a 3% increase. It's been more in that 10% range. And fearful of losing drivers, we've had to raise our salaries and our benefits. We've had to do a number of different things with fuel, utilities. And so what they said was, we'll allow you to apply for a max of a certain number, and anything you go over that is going to be at the cost of the city. So the numbers that you see here on this, it shows that our total local share is about $43,000. I'm a little concerned that that's what they're expecting from us, but they're not going to go any more with what they're going to provide us. So when we budget, I'm going to budget in a little bit of a cushion because we have preventative maintenance in the cost allocation model. We don't have our non-routine maintenance. And last year, because buses are so far out in ordering and the cost of supplies and different things, we had to buy an engine for a bus that we were supposed to just it was supposed to be out of our service, and we were getting a new bus for it. We're waiting 2 to 3 years now for the bus that should have been here in 2022. So my concern is that there's going to be a little bit more into that, like a 20 to 25,000 range that I'm thinking about adding to that. The second thing with our budget is that we have a bus that we ordered in 2022, I expect it in 2024. So while it was budgeted in 2022, we have to keep carrying over that local share of that bus. And then the third thing is that, again, when we're audited 2 or 3 years from the behind. So in 2024, we'll probably get our audit for our 2021 figures. Now, if we go over what we ask for, we have to make that up in our local share. But if we don't, and they somehow have paid us more, we have to pay that back. And we don't know that until 2-3 years out from that. So up until this year, Carla and I had been going through all of our billing and stuff like that, and then doing our transit transfer at the end of the year, based on what we know we still owe to make that zero or whole. I think what we're going to do from here on out is to make sure that we just do that transfer so that we have that in that transit account, so that when we come back through with that audit from the past years, that we have those numbers and that we're more exact. It looks better for us that we're budgeting and transferring what we think that amount's going to be every year, and so that we don't go negative into that transit fund. That being said, All of the numbers that I have here are what I expect. What we're looking at budgeting as a whole is between 100 and 115,000, which is about 40 to 50,000 less than what we were expecting in the original budget. So we will see a savings there, and we could see even more of a savings if we're correct, if Dale and I are correct on these numbers. And I think we're pretty close. So if anybody has any questions, that was a lot of information, but
Probably should have led with the savings.
yes, yes. But we will see a savings. As I visited with Reed about, our biggest concern is with that 3% increase and us being held to that with the 95.5 for this year or for next year and possibly the year after it, is that all of a sudden in 2026, the cost that they're letting us apply for, once they release that and we can't, we can go over that, we're going to see noticeable increases to our operations, and then they're going to drop us back down to an 80-20. And we as urban managers are very concerned that the state of Minnesota is just thinking it's going to be status quo for the next 2-3 years, and then all of a sudden we're going to see it go from 500,000 to 650,000, which is a very significant increase. And that's something that all of us are kind of expecting. And so it doesn't seem reasonable for them to just set us at that. This is where, you can't go over this. And if you do go over it, it's all at the local share, because then that's at our risk to try to pick that up. So in the next 2 years, we as 5307s or small urbans are going to work towards new formulas, ways to get more funding. They did increase some of the we do get some money from the motor vehicle sales tax and the licenses, tabs, et cetera, and they have increased that. But as far as money goes, it's very concerning. So we are looking at many, many different ways to try to save money to continue the service that they want us to provide. Because that's the other thing, is every time we turn around, they're like, well, you need to provide this service. And we like to see Sunday service. And we like to say evening service. And those cost money because we're not seeing the riders come back yet. We have seen an increase in ridership, but not to the tune that we were in like 2014 or 15. So.
Anybody have any questions? See none, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Request to purchase in-car and body cameras. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. President. We first purchased our body cams in 2018. We'd had various forms of in-car videos for quite a few years before that, but our first body cams were in 2018. They reached a point where the company will no longer extend the warranty. It's essentially expiring next month, so it's reached the time that we're going to have to replace those. We studied online a number of different options. There's a lot of different companies out there. We ultimately did in-house testing of 2 different brands, and our staff recommended that we continue on with WatchGuard, which is the company that we're currently using. So one change is before we paid a large amount up front, and then we had essentially just the service/warranty fee each year. They've kind of changed it a little bit. You have a lower cost up front, but your out years are a little bit are higher than they were before. One nice thing with this is halfway through, all of the body cams, which we're requesting to purchase 10, they would be replaced with brand new body cams in year 3. They've been very good in replacing the ones that have been damaged or for whatever reason stopped functioning. Hasn't been an issue in the past, but this way you're truly going to get brand new cameras, modern, the newest technology, then halfway through. So.
Do you have any questions for Chief? See none, sir.
Thank you.
All right, number 3, review the proposed PEG channel policy. Mr. Galstad.
Thank you. I've been working with Megan on this for the public. I guess it's the public education and government access channel that we get through our franchise agreement with Mid-Continent. Currently, this policy is kind of limiting it just to anything from government, which would be the city in various forms, and then education, anything that would have a public purpose. So this policy basically is just limiting it to those types of things. It's kind of a work in progress. I mean, if the city at some point in time wanted to include the public part of that, where it would be nonprofit organizations putting in some type of request for bulletin board offerings that would have utility to the citizens in the city of East Grand Forks, we could do that. I know that we've discussed that in the past. At least at this present time, there was just some concerns on who would be taking the applications, who would be the one that would be monitoring the system, who would be the one that would be making the decisions on first come, first served. So this policy is in retrospect just for government usage, and we can look at those types of things later. I don't know if there's any questions, or a lot of this is taken right out of the FCC and then other access channel policies that are being utilized through the cable companies in Minnesota.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Galstad?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Larson. Second by Vetter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned.